making anything global is something that takes a whole nother skill. The right people, the right partners at the right moment. And this is something that our very next speakers understand deeply as they sit at the intersection between Europe, Korea, and the US. Ladies and gentlemen, for this next fireside chat, please put your hands together for Tae Nam, who co-founded Storm Ventures, as well as Brendan Kim, Managing Director and Head of Hyundai Cradle, Silicon Valley. You guys ready? I'll leave the clicker here with you, all right?
Well, great. It's great to be here. As I was talking to Brandon on earlier about this, I was thinking that people in the audience may be wondering why you have, two Koreans on stage at a European deep tech conference. But we thought that this could be an opportunity to share some thoughts that might be helpful, which is to just give advice on how an early stage deep tech European startup could end up closing major deals with Korean giants like Hyundai Motor here. And so that's the intent of this session. As a brief background, I'm a co-founder of Storm Ventures. We're an early stage VC firm with offices in both Korea and Silicon Valley. And we've also had experience now investing in many European startups as well. And so with that, my guest is Brendan Kim. He's spent many years at both Samsung Electronics in the mobile business and also Hyundai Motor now in the auto business, so knows both businesses quite well and two large corporate cultures in Korea as well. So maybe Brendan could start off by describing what is the mission of Hyundai Cradle.
Sure. First, I want to thank you, Tae, for having me here and to Deep Tech Momentum for this opportunity to talk about what we're up to. Hyundai Cradle is basically the innovation and investment arm, corporate investment arm for Hyundai Motor Group. And Hyundai Motor Group is the three brands that you know, which is Kia, Genesis, and Hyundai. But we also represent somewhere between 60 and 70 affiliated companies. I can't even count them myself. I don't remember exactly how many. But everything from Mobis, which is a tier one auto parts manufacturer, to Glovis, a smart logistics company, to Hyundai Steel manufacturing, and of course Boston Dynamics, which is a robotics company. So we've got businesses covering a range of different industries all around the world.
Including defense as well now.
Defense as well. So Rotem is originally came from train manufacturing, but they became a defense contractor. Hugely profitable today over the last few years. It's a very hot sector, yeah.
So Brendan, I thought we could start with, I think the elephant in the room here, and that is, just starting with, should an early stage European startup with no Koreans on their founding team or management team make the effort to work with, try to make the effort to work with a Korean giant like Hyundai?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about the large Korean conglomerates, we're not Korean companies. We're really truly global companies, right? And so we're global brands. Hyundai is the number 3 manufacturer of automobiles in the world. Samsung Electronics, number 1 manufacturer of mobile phones and TVs. SK Hynix, huge in semiconductors. LG, small appliances and TVs all around the world. So these are major distribution channels for technology. And I think today, especially in deep tech, it's hard to become a successful company without large partners like what you see here and what you see in Korea. The challenge is that it's often like the Korean companies are often a black box. You don't know what the leadership looks like. I don't know how many of you can name the CEO of Apple versus how many of you can name the CEO of Samsung or Hyundai. Or Hyundai actually has Hyundai Motor Company and then Kia, so 2 different CEOs. I don't know how many of you know those names, right? So it's very much of a black box. There's also the language barriers and the cultural barriers. So it can feel like it's very difficult to work with Korean companies, even though they've got this even though they're major global brands and major distribution channels, right? And I think part of the reason we're up here is to help dispel some of those challenges, or to provide some advice on how to meet those challenges.
Well, you mentioned black box, so why don't we just drill right into that? I mean, you clearly outlined there's hope for the startup, so it makes sense to try. But in terms of the black box, maybe we should try some role playing. Like, just assume, Brendan, that instead of being Korean, you're a European founder with no Korean connections, wanting to do business with Hyundai Motor.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's you have to do your homework. You have to get the right kinds of introductions. But we're here, so we actually have a team in Berlin that covers Europe. We have a team in Silicon Valley that covers North America. We have a team in Israel that covers Israel. We have a team in Shanghai. We have a team in Singapore. So we are global, and we are in all of the major startup ecosystems around the world. We have two sides to Hyundai Cradle. We have the investments team, and we have what we call our open innovation team. So our investment team is responsible for making early stage investments in startup companies in those ecosystems. But what people don't often think about is our open innovation team. And our open innovation team, for me, when I think about it from an investment perspective, is our platform team. That team that goes to our portfolio companies and adds value by connecting those companies to the mothership, right, to our business units. And that's what they're all about. Their reason for being is to find collaboration opportunities, structure those collaboration opportunities, and help facilitate those collaboration opportunities. They're essentially your I don't know what to call it, your Sherpas, your guides, your gateway into Hyundai, and to introduce you to the right people at the right time, and most importantly, to provide you with feedback as to what your real situation there is, and to give you that back channel and really be your champions within the corporation, right? And I think that's the true advantage of either taking an investment from Hyundai or by working with that open innovation team.
Yeah, and this open innovation team, frankly, is something that I personally was not really understood the significance until talking with you about it yesterday. I mean, I know the corporate venture team because I work with them a lot as a VC, but not the innovation team. And so I can see their value, especially after you close a deal, but it turns out it seems they can be very effective before closing the deal, even at the very early stage. And maybe you can drill into a little bit about how they could help in the very first phase of just first meeting Hyundai, maybe even finding the right business group, and to ultimately getting an investment from Hyundai.
Yeah, our open innovation team is not restricted to working with our portfolio companies. They often engage with companies prior to investment.
They're almost like your scout team.
Yeah, they're very much like a scout team, and they'll engage even at the very earliest stages, and to provide those introductions and that feedback. Oftentimes, you may start off with some kind of collaboration with the startup before an investment happens, and that's sort of our way of getting to know you as a startup, and for the startup to get to know us as a company, to decide whether we're good partners as an investor or not. When you make that, when you take in a corporate investor, you can't just take them off the cap table anymore, right? So you're sort of married to the end, and so oftentimes the open innovation team can be a good way to kind of test the waters with the corporate, and for us to understand the value proposition that the startup has, right? And so it's a really good way to engage on both sides.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I know this may not be Hyundai, but another company I was talking to, it was a medical device company with an open innovation team. They actually had like a goal or some metric in terms of number of new technologies that were brought into the company.
Yeah.
So really playing this scout technology business development kind of role. Is that the same?
And I would say that it's not just Hyundai that has these open innovation teams. All of the Korean conglomerates have an open innovation team. So Samsung, LG, SK, they all have these open innovation teams, and they're measured on how many startups they can scout, how many startups they bring to the table. That's the reason for being again. So how many collaborations are they actually able to execute? So they have a huge incentive to try to look for these collaboration opportunities and make them happen. So that's a major part of how they're measured.
Yeah, that was something that I didn't really appreciate until recently, when I talked to Brandon and realized that as a startup, that could be a very good entree in because that's their job and that's what they're going to get graded on as well too. I want to switch back to something you talked about before, which is sort of this cultural miscommunication, sort of the challenges in communicating, let's say, between a European company and a Korean company. Maybe you could just elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, I think the cultural challenges are probably one of the most difficult things to navigate. I've been in many meetings where it looks like the meeting's going great. The cultures are, and this is a broad, maybe a stereotype or a broad brushstroke on how people think, but I think in Asia, the meetings are usually very friendly, very deferential, not a lot of disagreement, not a lot of directness, I would say. So I've managed teams in Israel, Europe, U.S., and Korea, and I can see the differences.
Probably the Israelis on one end and
the Israelis are
Koreans on the other.
Again, broad brushstrokes, right? But the Israelis are going to be very direct. You're going to know how they feel about something at the end of the meeting. They're going to tell you, okay, this is not going to work out for us, right? Or this is amazing, and let's go to the next step. Usually the meetings in Asia, there's a lot of nodding, a lot of politeness, a lot of and not a lot of questions. At the end of the meeting, the entrepreneur might ask, as they're taught, so what do you think? Like, what's the next step? And I think in Asia, the answers will be very non-committal, right? They won't tell you yes, they won't tell you no, and you walk out of the meeting, but you generally walk out of the meeting feeling pretty good, because there wasn't a lot of confrontation there. There wasn't a lot of hard questions, right? So you think, oh, they get it. It seems like a good meeting. I'm really excited for the next step. And then you email or you call, and you don't hear anything back, and it's just dead silence, and you don't know what's happened. You're like, what happened there, right? And I think that's where having a champion or having like an OI team that makes that introduction really is very helpful because they can give you the back channel feedback. Sometimes it's actually good feedback. Sometimes it takes time in an organization to get people aligned to take you to the next step. And so sometimes, they don't know how to answer. You email back, you email the person, the people you met the next day, and you don't hear anything back because they're trying to get their ducks in a row and they don't want to overcommit. They don't want to say no or yes quite yet, and so they're getting their thoughts together. Other times it is a no, but they don't want to tell you the bad news because, again, they want to be polite and they want to be deferential. But if you have somebody on the inside that can give you that back channel feedback to say, okay, that was actually a waste of time. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to take a lot longer than you think. That's like gold, right? Or they give you the feedback to saying, okay, they like these things about your product, but these are the two questionable areas that they had, like whether it was security issues or access issues or something. And that's great feedback for your in terms of developing your product. And so you need that kind of feedback, right? And that cultural understanding goes both ways because the open innovation people are generally local hires. They're part of the local network, local ecosystem. They're embedded in that local ecosystem. They know people in that ecosystem. Very easy for you to check them out, for them to check you out. And so they know how to respond to startups. They know what startups care about. They know how to be responsive. They know how to deal with startups because it's their reputation, right? It's because they're part of the ecosystem too, and they want to do what's right by the startups. And so it's a good person to have that's sort of on your team to get you that back channel feedback, understands what startup ecosystem, what startup culture is like, and then can also translate that back to Korea to say, like if Korea has a demand or has a request that seems unreasonable, you have somebody there that can say, actually, for a startup, this is not a good idea, right? The startup won't. This is not a thing startups should do. We shouldn't be recommending these kinds of things. So it's a good in between to translate both sides.
So what I found is that basically it's introductions and back channel feedback, which are two things that every startup needs to enter into a major corporate relationship. And so what you're doing with the open innovation team is something that we've sort of, in the past with our companies, try to do by themselves by hiring, let's say, a former Hyundai executive that's retired, and so as a result can use his or her Rolodex to make those introductions, use those connections to sort of get feedback, to know exactly what your status is. And so what you've done is you've sort of systemized that process rather than doing it on a advisor by advisor basis. You've constructed the whole team. And in a way, that's what this whole concept of open innovation offices in large companies is doing.
Yeah, we really try to institutionalize that process. And I think a lot of corporates do this. It's just, like understanding that it's, as a corporate organization, as a large corporate organization, that not all the innovation can happen inside the company. So you need to be able to access innovation from the outside, and you have to have a more of a systematic way of doing it, because it's otherwise it becomes haphazard and there's no path.
Yeah. And then I was thinking about what you were saying about the cultural differences in communication, and in particular, I think you've focused on the example of what is yes, what is no. How people say a simple thing like yes or no is different. The thing that I found that doing business here and going out for dinners in Germany versus like when I go to Korea is just a simple thing of like even toasting is different. In Germany here, when you drink and you toast, you're supposed to look the person in the eyes. If you don't, I think it's like 7 years bad luck, something like that. In Korea, if you do that, especially to an elder, then it's viewed as disrespect. And you're almost like challenging that person's authority. So it's just a simple thing like a toast.
There are a lot of rules when it comes to drinking in Korea.
We should have
a separate session around drinking etiquette in Korea.
Yes, that is definitely the case. But one is, staring in the eyes of a senior is different. So those are just sort of specific examples, but I think what Brandon said is about, yes or no is important. And it's just the way of communicating. So maybe we can talk about any success cases or things where people did right, any specific pointers that you may want to provide.
Sure. I think we can point to at least 3 examples on the Europe side where we've engaged with startups. They've all come in through either our investments team or through our open innovation team, and at fairly early stages. So there's a company called GRZ that is basically enabling distributed hydrogen production for us, and so Hyundai is a big believer in hydrogen, and so that's a company that was successfully engaged and continues to engage with Hyundai. On the AI side, there's a company called
Do you know how big the company was when they first started engaging?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't.
Okay.
But I don't know the answer to the second company, Cusp AI.
Okay.
Cusp AI was a very early stage company, Series A company, basically sort of like a neo lab, and so they were applying AI to discover new materials, and so they're working with us on fuel cell EVs. And then there's a third company, Genomind, that is really interesting. there's a lot of nickel that goes into our batteries, and we want alternative sources of nickel to secure, supply chain, given the geopolitical concerns and everything else. They're actually able to sort of mine nickel from soil through plants, and so they plant, I guess, genetically enhanced plants that can sort of soak up the nickel in the soil, and that's becoming, we're seeing if they can, if we can make that an alternative source for our nickel. But that's also very early stages, right? And so, they're growing these plants, but we haven't really tried them in our batteries. But that's what we're aiming for.
Well, I think those are definitely examples of early stage deep tech.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Which actually is a surprise for me coming from a large Korean company, but no, it makes a lot of sense.
One of the things I would say about like when you should engage with a large company like a Hyundai is I would encourage startup founders to engage earlier rather than later. And the reason I say that is because number one, it takes time. So you're not going to, as a seed stage company, or maybe even as a Series A company, going to strike a large commercial contract, right? We're going to need a lot of proof points along the way. But if you start when you're a Series B company, it may not be late. It's going to take the same amount of time. So you want to try to engage with large corporates early because it takes that time. But the other thing is, I think as a startup, you learn much earlier what a large corporate customer really wants and what it really needs for you to be successful with them. And so, and I think that part of the feedback that you get, it's not so much the yes or the no feedback that you get, but it's like, no, but here's why we like you, and here's why you're challenging, right? And that kind of feedback is really valuable as you start to iterate your product and think about how do you sell into enterprise. You'll get feedback around your product, around your sales motion, and the earlier you get that kind of feedback, especially if large enterprise is your end customer, you want that feedback as early as possible so you tack to the right place.
Yeah. I think that process of getting an internal champion at your customer is critical to any large, complex sales process. It doesn't matter whether it's, German or Korean or American. I was wondering if there's any specific tips that you found any startups do that was quite helpful. One example that I found that was really helpful is if you can come up with a very simple but compelling one page that can be shared with people at headquarters, other different places, because people read one page. They normally don't read 2 pages, but they'll read one page. And that if it's simple and really persuasive, then they'll want to meet. And so the goal of that one pager is to get a meeting.
Yeah, it's absolutely the right hook. And the other thing that I would say is that you want the introduction to the right people. So getting that introduction to somebody local rather than trying to find somebody in Korea, I think is really important. And again, like I say, most of these Korean companies have local presence. So you want to try to get that local champion on your side first.
Yeah. So I think we're getting tight on time. So just want to end with the last question of, are there specific areas of focus in deep tech for your team now?
AI is certainly AI at the edge is really important to us. So continuous learning inside vehicles or inside our robots, things like that. Robotics is a big area for us. So physical AI, energy, anything around electrification, battery technologies, things like that. Sustainability is a big area for us as well. So new material science, things of that nature. A wide range of things actually, it's surprising again how large Hyundai Motor Group is, and so we're very much active in all these deep tech areas.
Okay, well, this has been great. Really appreciate, Brendan, your thoughts, and in a way, I thought this is also helpful bit for just doing corporate partnering deals in general. Whether it's with a Korean, U.S., or even, as I say, German companies, it's a very similar process. And maybe just end with the last thing, Brendan, of how people can reach you and your team.
Yeah, let's see. Reza's in the room, so you can raise his hand. He's part of our open innovation team. Sorry, Reza, you might get swamped. But you can also reach out to me. My email is very easy. It's brendan.kim@cradleinc.com or brendan.kim@hyundai.com if that's easier. Happy to take any emails and happy to take any introductions.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan.